It's good to be seated. I will stay seated. So let's get back to the discussion, post-talk discussion or post-show discussion, to open up a little bit and to deep dive a little bit more into those projects. And also we will open the floor to you because I'm sure you had a lot of questions. So not to have this very blank space when you ask question to the venue. Think of it a little bit. We will have a first round of question with Carla and we will let you the floor afterwards, so prepare your question. But I want to ask a first question to all of you because what I noticed in the different presentation was the question of temporality, because the development of an artistic project and the development of a tech project. And what I can imagine is that there is some friction in between those two processes. Catinca, you speak about that also Florence. So I want to know what was difficult to manage those difference of temporalities, and does also it affect the artistic development, because the core of the project is an artistic development and a content development. It's not a technological development. It comes to help the show to exist, of course, but it's not the subject of the project. So, of course, it's always difficult to manage that. Probably technicians want to take the leads at the moment and they want to impose their temporality, and you have another kind of thing. So does someone want to open it with that problem in question?
I can say something about it.
I can put it there. Normally
actually, for us it was quite interesting to have this divided, or to work in sprints basically, in the development of the show. And also, I hear, okay. And also we developed it on a content level. I'm worried for this. 3 times. So I stopped just talking. Is this better? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
So, yeah, in a way, what we took from it is to rehearse more or prepare the production in different phases, and that helps the artistic work as well. For me, that was interesting, because then you can rethink in the time in between. Are we in the good direction artistically? So I like this preparation time that you get from the technicians.
Yeah, the challenging part actually came when you came to Linz, no? So the Deep Space is a venue that is very heavily booked, so it was really a bit of a battle with the Deep Space management team to really allocate the slots for the rehearsals. And at the same time, it's a very complex technological environment, as we touched upon. So we really saw there then the very practical implications of doing a piece that depends so much in its whole storytelling on the technology that it works with, and then the challenge of making that technology actually work. It's like in a traditional, let's say in a traditional stage setting, it's like you have 5 rehearsal days and 4 of them you spend on switching on the lights, which is also kind of the challenge that you were facing, no? So, and I think this is something that where there is also a big similarity also between those two pieces, that the story itself, the narrative itself, depends on that technology being implemented. And so of course, on the one hand, everybody agrees that, okay, we need to first fix the environment and it has to work, because otherwise there is no play. It's just not going to work without that. And on the other hand, of course, the poor, especially the actors, sitting there waiting for the technicians to finally get there. So I think there also I think maybe the way of working, so everybody who has tried this once has to just incorporate this experience into future designs in ways of working, to really say, okay, we allocate double the rehearsal time. One is for the environment, the technical action, and the other one is for the physical action or the performance itself.
You have to wait.
It's working? Yes, great. For us in Craiova, I think we had to build first trust with this project. And 1 year before the actual production, we had to organize, or we thought about organizing some focus groups, both with the actors and the collaborators of the company, with the technicians and the producers department of the theater, and with representatives of the young audience, because we wanted our initial intention was to address this performance to young audience. So first we had to build trust because we needed them to empathize with the project, starting from the design thinking proposed by our colleagues from Enschede University. So we learned from that very important moment to empathize with the project. And that needed some time for the people to adapt to what could have come. And then we put together two artists, Catinca and Cipriano, who hadn't been working together before. So that was also a challenge, and they had to build trust and to know each other during almost 1 year in order for them to build that. And still, it needed time actually for them, and during the rehearsals actually to merge their way of working, because Cipriani is also used to work for installations that are exhibited in galleries, and that's some very specific approach of how you exhibit a piece of installation, like in a fashion show. You know, everything is like in the last very moment, and you saw the last dress and so on, then the model goes on the stage. But this cannot happen really in the theater, because we need time to rehearse with everything, with the people, with the actors and so on. And Catinca, when she was on rehearsals, she wanted things on the stage. Bring me the VR, bring me that, I want to see that. And then Ciprian said, I need 2 more hours, I need 2 more days to say that. So this is about, a way of really working together, of creating together. So this takes time. Yep.
Yeah, learning experience. Florence, how was it for you and your production, where you had the artistic research and the technological research? How did time play out for you?
I remember this moment when we were here working with engineers, and it was like the very beginning. And they said to me, what is exactly the piece you want to do? You have to tell us exactly what happens on stage, and then we will build what you need. But you cannot do that, right? So you want someone to build a tool for you that can adapt to your arts. You don't want to adapt your art to the tool, right? So engineers are used to do research and development, right? So it's also linked to the question of resources, right? How much resources you have gives you the time you have, right? So you have to know that the engineer, they used to work with research and development. So they search until they find. As artists, we have deadlines. There is a premiere in 1 year, and it has to be ready. And we need to work with these differences. And so at what point, what we did is, like, we told the engineers, we said, stop now. We want you to stop the development. We could have so many other features, but first of all, we don't have the money to pay for them. And second of all, we need now to work with the features that we have and create art with these features and use them to the end. And maybe we'll do a second show and we will go further. But at one point, you need to stop and to decide that these are the tools you're working with.
Absolutely, and I guess it's this question of communication and learning about the other language. I love, Taavet, how you explained that the developer that was accompanying your production has a background as a dancer himself, so he's coming from the arts and made a tool for you where you also, as non-coders, can now work with it, and you're not heavily relying on his coding skills, but there was a common language that you shared. Paul.
Okay, so we're not at the rehearsal phase yet, but we've been using a lot of time now exploring possibilities, and we have some hypotheses that we're working on. Can we do this with low latency locally with the model? And we're exploring that. And on the script side, we've had like two guys from the theater coming to our location at Net Nordic and sitting a whole day or two, just working, playing around with the models and see if can it create script, can it stay within a role, will that work? And then we've had workshops with a few actors trying it out, just playing with it for a day, back and forth. And then we've had the technical workshops where we're trying to put everything together like I showed in the picture, where my guy, who has been working remote most of the time, on site, and then Eilif doing the video and putting everything together, just working technically with no actors at that point to see if we can get the latency and the delays within the right limits. And then, so our goal is to, by end of November, maybe at least before Christmas, fix the technology, and we're going to use this model, and this is what we're aiming for, and then so that when we get to rehearsal, the technology should be finished.
Perfect.
So and my gang is we're used to working with deadlines. So that's what we do for a living. So we try to make a minimal viable product, you know, with a fixed functionality delivered on time. So we're used to that. But the collaboration with the theater has been really good because we're still in the exploration phase, though.
Yeah, for us was it maybe a bit different case also because we don't have a theater behind us. We just freelance artists, and we collaborate with Estonian Academy and Electron. And just for the record, I am also coder myself. Yes. So it's the first time for me when I didn't program myself, my production. So we could, thanks to that fact that I understand what Norbert was saying, also programming level, and he understood what we are after in a dancer level. So for us, it created really nice, you know, a middle ground. So he could explain us why it takes 2 days. He just explained us code, what he has to do, and then we thought like, do we want that really? Do we need that, or is it just an extra feature and we can skip it? So we had this conversation all the time. And so that really also fastened the process.
So to give you some context about the ACuTe idea, it's not just theaters participating, but also academia, universities, partners like Ars Electronica, and teaming up with partners who are not necessarily part of your theater bubble is something we really encourage. So I wanted to ask you, like I know, for example, you had the chance, Julien and Florence, through your partnership with Théâtre de Liège, to talk to Safran very early on and get some expert insight. I would love to hear, like, how was it for you to team up with non-theater people and have them on board?
Just to mention Safran, probably all of you know, but this is a big factory here in Liège and all over the world that building motors for aircrafts, by the way. And their job is to build motors. That's the main job, not to do theater. But they are quite good at to be open-minded.
They were really super nice to us, and also they created this space of, in French we call it idéation, which is a moment where, so they were people from Safran, but they also invited like freelance engineers, which was very nice to do, because we didn't know how to do it, right? We had no competence about that. So they hired, they invited freelance engineers, and then we just talked like for 2 hours, and I talked about the show I wanted to do, and they were like, yeah, and then they said, you know, you cannot change the law of gravity, you cannot change there's a we say une règle de trois, a rule of three, right? So time, weight and height. And once you get there, you cannot really change that, right? So you have to work with this. And so we very quickly realized that we would have very few light, like that it would be very, very few. But I was ready for everything. I was like, I'm gonna do it. So, you know, help me or leave me. It took 1 month for them to say that they won't do it. So that they didn't have the ability to do it. They said, we're doing motors, right? So we don't really have the profile you're looking for. But they helped us to do an offer, like a call, like an open call, to find other engineers, which was so useful because we didn't have the company, you know, you too, we didn't have the skills. So we asked for things that we didn't know we needed. So you work with people who know better what you need, but in another hand, they don't know what you want to do. And they don't know how you do it somehow. They don't know how you create on stage. So it goes and comes, like you have to get along. But it was very nice, like we laughed a lot. And at one point I said, there's a shamanic vision for me in the piece, and they were like, well, call the shaman, right? The shaman's gonna help you. And I was like, But they were very open, right? And it surprised me. They were really nice. Julien wants to say something.
It's sorry to crashing also. I remember, because I was in those meetings at Safran, and the first time we met, one of the engineers tell to Florence that if we can make it, you can fake it. This is a theater trick, in fact, and that has been said by an engineer. Fake it until you make it, and that was really the yes. Fake it until you make it.
And also, what was helpful is we invite also. We are artists, but we invite a technician from theater, from the institution, and they help us to make a technical link between the artistical view and the engineer language, and it was very helpful to invite them.
Yeah, because then you have a set operator who says, like a stage operator who says, I cannot lift more than 50 kilos, or you know the les perches, the rakes on stage cannot have more than 200 kilos. So it narrows down where you're searching, right? So of course we did that. Yeah, we did that right away, and it was very useful. And they were very happy that they would be included into that process at the first stage.
At the very beginning,
yeah,
so in the ideation phase where you start working on your concept. That's something, by the way, if you're interested in doing digital productions, we always invite you to think of the possibilities with the expert technologist right from the beginning on. Don't think you have your whole concept and then bring them on at the end. We promise you that's not going to work. So having people with you with the different perspectives is extremely enriching. So I'm looking now at you. Are there any questions that you have specifically for our wonderful people sitting here on stage?
Can I ask a question?
Of course. That's what we're here for.
Actually, it's a question for Paul. Thank you for your presentation on the AI. But I was wondering, how do you think about, I don't know if it's a fact, I think it's a fact, that AI is very biased, and how should we deal with that problem? So in the sense that if you ask AI to show me a picture of a professor, you get very likely you and not me. But I could be a professor as well. So how do we deal with that?
I'm not a political guy in that sense, but AI is a reflection of our society. So when you train a large language model on all of our books and background material and Wikipedia, it's just a compressed version of what is already there. So Google, when they released Gemini 2, and you ask Google to make a picture of soldiers in the First World War, they worked so much on the bias that they had Indians in. Is it allowed to say that now? Probably not. I'm sorry. Native Americans dressed up in English army suits, but it's not historical correct. So it's this: do we want to change the data to be more diverse? That depends on where you want to go from there. Yeah. Yeah, you want to change the stereotypes going forward, but you've trained on data that is historical, which is biased. So it's a challenge. Yeah.
Vanessa.
Yeah. I had a couple of questions about that as well, because one thing, so what we've seen in our field is that we have seen a lot of artists who are now working with creating their own training data sets, and indeed working with open approaches, with working with open software that is available for AI training, and that really, so we had a fantastic project exhibited that this year at the festival, that retells the history of technological innovation throughout the 20th century with intentionally wrong pictures. So they are pictures of actual female pioneers of technological development that were never taken. But so this was of course only possible to generate these pictures, which were generated with AI, and then they were printed out and put into this little dia projection thing to recreate the very interesting project. But so here, this was only possible because the artist really worked for a very long time and with very much dedication on creating the data set that she would be training on, so that actually the pictures that she was intending for would come out. And this is actually my question to you. So because you said you are working with ChatGPT, so you're working with the general model, and I have seen last year a Dutch production. It was still in an experimental stage where the entire script was created with AI. They were also working with a general model, and then they also, so the entire script, including the stage design, including the light direction, everything was generated with ChatGPT, and even then the voices of the actors who were then physically on stage were generated with a text-to-speech, so they trained on their own voices, on voice samples and so on. So it was like this entirely AI performance. And short background, I'm by training a literature scholar, so I was very interested in that script. And it was, so that they also shared the prompt, and it was supposed to be an experimental text, but as it was trained on this huge scale training data set that GPT works with, it was like really, it was so boring. It was not an experimental text. It was the most conventional theater text that you could think of, and I was really thinking, okay, for the intention that they had, it would have been much more successful probably if they had trained on a much smaller data set comprised exclusively of the types of texts that they were aiming for creating. So this was also something that where you said you feel like you're moving in a very successful direction, but if you're working with a general language model, isn't that kind of the problem, that you always end up with the, the kind of, since it's a calculation of the most probable result, right? So aren't you ending up with probable results that are boring in art? Long question.
And confirming the world as it is.
Yeah. So good questions there. So yes, we are working with the general model, but we're also working with the available open source models like Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. They've released their models called Llama. So we're downloading them and working with them on the servers that we have on stage. And as you say, you can train, you can fine-tune a model with your own data. So if you have pictures that you've staged of not historical correctness, you can train a model with those pictures to be able to generate pictures going forward that are more diverse and so on. So that's possible. And what we're doing is we're trying to make an AI prosecutor which has all the background data why humans shouldn't be able to exist going forward because we've messed up the world, we've destroyed the environment, and all that sort of stuff. But the dialogue you can have and the arguments that we have with that AI prosecutor, we find quite meaningful and quite relevant today when we're working with it. But we're also instructing it in the different tones of voice, and to have some humor and to change some perspective. So we're giving it instructions as well in order to do that. And we are going to have a blend of live dialogue with these models and pre-made, pre-recorded stuff as well. Because it might get very boring, as you say, or if not boring, it could be very static in the dialogue if we only work on live dialogue. So we have to work on that. But that's something that the theater are good at, not me so much. Okay.
To come back to the question that you had about the ethics of AI, 2 artist groups that we received at the Academy who are working with the performing arts, and exactly that question of who are we seeing when we type beautiful woman, professor, and that sort of stuff, they're doing exactly what you said. So there's this principle called ethics by design, so that you work with your own coding team, you have open source software, you know the training data, because with the big available options, often you have no idea what was fed in there, so you have no idea about author rights and that sort of stuff. So they built their own models, they know what they put in there, they have it on their own servers, so not on some clouds. So there are systems that are now developing more and more where you can kind of counter those biases because they're very, very dominant. So team up with artists who are kind of having the knowledge of building their own systems. And if you're looking for them, come and talk to us. We know some wonderful people kind of trying to break the system.
I have a small comment on that. I think, or isn't it also what we ask from AI? Isn't like it's like a smart person in a suitcase? Somebody described it to me. That the question is, what do we ask and how we phrase our question? That, for example, we did in our first iteration, we did the daily recaps in a haiku format, and I was really suspicious in the beginning. Of course, it was 1,000 years ago, it was last summer in AI development. But I was like suspicious, it was mediocre responses, and one day it came, history gave 2 girls who saved Estonia from darkness. And like, you are right. Like, actually it is something, it can talk to me poetically, like in a poetical level. So this brings me the question, brings me to the question to you, like what, it becomes your Q&A, right? Are we all aware of it? But the question is like, what do you think, when is the moment when AI will give us answers what we expect, and how, when we recognize it, even though if it maybe can go according to calculation is something different? Rephrase that. AI gives us biased answers because we want to hear them, even though if a calculation could be different. Is it possible, and how would you recognize that?
Okay. So if you like I've been using Midjourney for generating pictures for our job descriptions and job postings. So if I go to Midjourney and say create a picture of a Java programmer sitting in a beautiful office space, I will get a male, white, 30-year-old, right? But like you said, you have to instruct what you want, because if you just say, give me a Java programmer, it will look up into its data and predict whatever it has seen in its training data and dream up something similar to what it has seen, right? So if I say, I want a Java programmer, I want two, one girl and one boy, mid-30s, you know, different skin colors. If I'm more specific, it will dream up that. So to conquer diversity or bias, historical bias, you have to be more specific on what you want, which is your point. You have to instruct the model to give you what you want to see. Because if you don't instruct it, it will just dream up what it has seen before in the training data. Did that make sense?
Yeah, so the prompting becomes more and more
important.
important.
The prompting is important. So you can instruct to get an image of a dog in an army suit in World War I if you ask it to. But if you ask it, give me a picture of a soldier from World War I, you'll get a 20-year-old white male with an English. Yeah. Because that's what the history has given. I think we need both, though. We need to be able to historically have historical correct context, but we need to be able to also predict and get some futuristic based on our instructions as well.
In fact, prompting is creating world by words. This is a new competency that we have, and I think theater people make that also. They have image in minds, and they try to put in words. So making a good prompt, in fact, it is taking back the power. Because if we do, I want a male programmer, you give all the power to the computer and to the AI. But if you prompt and you make the world that you want to see, you take back the power. So we don't have to complain about the bias, because if we let the AI work alone, of course there will be bias, and we know that. Every tool is like that. A camera is also, if we put the camera, she will record the world, but if you take an action, if you frame, you can tell a story. So we need to learn how to use those AIs, by the way.
Exactly, and that's where you as artists can use your skills, because I'm a physicist, I'm not very good at, you know, coming up with the good ideas for a prompt. But you artists, you can create a prompt, a vision, and describe it much more accurately than I can, and then the model will give you a much better results. And that's why Anders and Per, working in the Norske Theater, they're working with ChatGPT in ways I could never do. So, and they're really creating good results from that, because they're using their creativity in the prompt and fine-tuning and looking at wording and doing it all over again, just working iteratively.
But referring to your comparison now between the camera and the AI, I think that takes us in a very good direction here, because as we agree, the camera does not record the reality. The camera records the perspective of the person utilizing the tool. The same is true for AI. And I very much like of course, I mean, prompting is becoming an art form in itself. No, I would like to make a recommendation on that note. Everybody look up Paul Trillo and look at his social media postings. So Paul Trillo was one of the prime users or the test users of Sora, and creates different types of videos, among them also music videos, and he has shared snippets from the prompts that he has written to instruct the AI to create the visuals for the music videos that he does. And you have these snippets where you have like this 600 word snippet that he used to describe a scene that is maybe not even 10 seconds of that video, so it's really impressive. So if you want to learn how to prompt, look up Paul Trillo.
And that's really art, creating that prompt. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's your Q&A.
Yeah.
We're also, one of the other programs is the Theatre Green Book, so and because you're so busy with prediction, can you predict us a bit the ecological consequences of the use of AI on this scale? Or you're not very
well,
happy with this question?
so the question is to if AI could predict the ecological consequences?
No, can you tell us a bit, inform us a bit about these huge computers who
Take up a lot of energy. I
Yes.
guess the question is more like, what is the ecological footprint? We're talking here about resources and having those powerful, like computers,
Yes.
like they take up a lot of resources.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have the calculations and the predictions myself here, but I'm aware that they're using a lot of energy, and there's various areas that they're building up huge data centers now to be able to run language models. I don't have a correct answer for how that will play out, unfortunately, but I'm aware of the problem. And it's really hard to stop this race and to put laws of we're not going to do any more large language models. I think that's very, very hard to do on a global scale, because you can shut down Europe, but US and China will keep going, and so it's a race that it's hard to stop, I think. But the power consumption, I think, is something that a lot of people are working on. So I would expect the power consumption per sentence generated will go down as time goes by.
Any other questions from the audience? If not, I would want to stress another point that was part of the integral idea of ACuTe. We were talking about the time that is needed to have the time to do technical research. I know that some of you took advantage of residencies. Like, could you share a little bit how was that helpful, in case it was? Is that a structure that we should do way more to have when we want to do digital theater pieces? Catinca, for example, you had the chance to go to Azkuna Centra. The colleagues are unfortunately not here today, but they are also partners of ACuTe, a cultural center in Bilbao, and I think they hosted you and your colleague for a week. How was that?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I believe in the necessity of residencies. I mean, as Heidi said in the first day, and I think I will reinforce it again, there is a big line between Germany and France in two different production systems. So very interesting, all of these conversations here. For project-based production, we are in the world of repertoire theaters. It's a complete shift of paradigm. So for us, this type of project is an alien. So it challenges on every level, production, technical, artistical, and so on. So for us, having this week in Bilbao, where we just had no pressure, no deadlines, no other people but ourselves, a space, all the technology, we brought some, they had some, was an amazing thing. And actually, it was an amazing thing that two artists coming from very different fields, like me and Ciprian, had this time together and to get in sync and to actually create the core cell of the project. So I think something we haven't said earlier in the presentation is that besides the show, we also have a VR installation. So this is a side product that was actually the cell that gave birth to the show. And it was a very inspirational moment for us. I mean, now so this is the good part. Because we finished the project, now I also have a critical stance of that. We would have needed some help in developing the design of the process of working. I mean, this was a matter of improvisation for us, and we discovered it while we went through it. It would have been very helpful if we would have had an experience like in Dortmund, for example, where some people who have been through this would have helped us shape the process. Because the fact that we didn't know how to shape the process created a big tension with the theater, because we are working with technicians that are used to analog theater, and that was quite different. And we also had this pressure that the performance is not just running for a week or something like this. So every month we have to put on the set, which is actually an installation. We have to bring people from outside to do that. Yeah, so it was the learning curve on every level of this, which was basically the biggest challenge, and also the most creative part. I mean, so at the end of it, we can say everybody learned. What came out of it defeated all of our expectations. We had this idea that shows that involved technology should be really spectacular. Actually, now things shifted. We realized that for doing 5 minutes of a spectacular performance, you need to work like 6 months. And I think we have an alien on the Romanian scene now. And it's a great opportunity for us to see how that goes. And I'm very happy that our friends in Bilbao, because by now I think they became our friends, are going to invite the installation next year in May. And I'm really curious what their perspective would be, seeing the outcome after they have fostered this incubation period of the residency.
Wow, thank you. Yeah. Anyone else who wants to?
And this takes a lot of actually energy for the theater, for the repertoire theater, and a lot of money actually to bring to artists and to make them stay and ideate and for long periods of time. So this is also the constraints of budget, because they also had other projects in development. So it was very harsh for us actually to take them and to really, because I made some tries to explain them that there are going to be a lot of time spending for that. Ciprian, when we brought him in the project, he said, but people from the theater don't understand how much time this takes to us. And he constantly repeated that. And I said, do you think that I'm not understanding? Why are you repeating this? And I said, no, we are not going to understand when this will come to the stage. And that's, yes, we need actually a new design, a new architecture of how to work with that in the time constraints, in budget constraints, and in the fact that actually you see now that AI is taking the stage. So what we have done and what our technology stops in a way at the VR, and it's already something that it's old. So by the time you begin to ideate and so on, when you really come to the production, that technology could be already old. Or not posh enough, or I don't know. And so, because since Bilbao till we did the production, we already had to change the VR glasses, because Google released a new version of that, and they had to change all the projects made in 6 months before. They had to change it on a new VR glasses. And I said, I want that toy now. And we, the producers, said, okay, so we're buying another one. And what we are doing with the second one? Well, but it's a few thousand euros. Well, now, so we experimented with that. But yes, it's quite challenging to do that, and it's still expensive. Yeah.
Paulien, you wanted.
For us, it was very, very good and useful to collaborate with the Saxion University, also on the budget level and time level. Students, they do have time. So that was a really interesting process. Also became with them with a very open, broad, really in the brainstorming phase, and it felt very luxurious for us to have 4 or 5 students working on our project. It also it shaped somehow our process, because every 2 weeks they were working in this 2-week sprint, so we had to give input to them, and otherwise we would have started far too late with our preparations for the production. Now we had to work with them, and that, yeah, was great. So that is also a possibility, I think.
Thank you for your question, because there's a huge cost from the ecological perspective with AI, and you know it. I mean, you know it. And I will have to go because I have a general rehearsal in like 1 hour. So, I just wanted to say that innovation is not just AI, right? It's like there's a lot of human capacities that we have, and there's a lot of what I learned from our project was that what's interesting for a theater, for an institution, is to put more value into the territory, right? And it's that there are a lot of competences around your territory, in your territory, and each answer is singular. So innovation is around you. You don't have to go outside. You don't have to go digital. Maybe innovation today is something different. Maybe innovation is trying to put in relation people who never talk together. And the digital tools can help to do that, of course. But we're in a huge climate crisis. Like in a huge, it's huge, and you know that, we all know that. So we need to find answers that are from our territories. You can't apply what happens in Brussels with what happens in Romania. It's just different. These are different territories. And I just wanted to say that, and thank you for your question.
I think Vanessa still wanted to say something, if we can give her a mic.
Thank you. I echo that. Also the mic echoes that.
Yeah. I wanted to just say a maybe general thing, which is that all of the productions that were introduced today are just so fabulous, and I think what makes them so fabulous is how they integrally work with applying technology to something that they want to say.
Yes.
And that would also be reacting to to what George was saying, to the problem with the new tool. This would be coming from an institution that for 45 years has been working with tech nerds who always want the new tool. I think that one thing that theaters that are now more and more incorporating digital methodologies and technologized approaches, I think one thing to always keep in mind, and then depending on who you work with, one thing to always bring the artists, bring the technologists back to is, do you need that? Do you need that new tool? Do you need to prompt the AI one more time? Do you need that? So technology-driven art shouldn't be technology-driven for technology's sake, but for the art's sake, no? So do you really need the new goggles? Is it not going to work with the old ones? This is something that we exhibit, you know, like 600 projects. We only have like 30 goggles. So then you get these. Can you do it with these? Yeah.
We work with a startup, with a very small studio. So I think that when they stepped in and they had this budget, for example, there was a new toy for them, and we couldn't say them no. And I'm considering what you are saying, and I think that for the next projects that might be something to address in a way. But when they were so excited about the fact that they have a new technology and they ask about that, and so they also are trying. They also want to do that. But I would go, and maybe I will tell Catinca to continue for that, because I think that new technology and what you said about using them in a critical way when we need that, and I think Catinca also focused on that. When I'm going to need that, it's also a trigger, and it takes one of our themes of the sub-themes of researching in this project about new dramaturgies, because when you go with this technology and so on, there's a whole dramaturgy that is being born here, and these are, I think that, I don't know if you have something to add.
Yeah, but the two things. First of all, I mean, and again, every time I am in this type of international environment, we get to this discussion of differences between the East and the West. We do not have in Romania this type of institute. We do not have this type of organization that is researching the relationship between art and technology. So basically, we are the pioneers. And these people that are doing this are people that just felt themselves this is the direction that they want to research and create in. And then everything is very home-based. So let's put it like this in a very frank way. Our budget went on buying things for the theater, because the theaters in Romania lack this type of technology. So then this makes a pretty big difference. On the other hand, yes, I mean, one of the statements we wanted to make with the show, and this is both from me and Ciprian, was using these old TV sets just to say we can be as well creative in this regard. So everything we bought for this show can be used for other shows, and it's going to be useful for the theater. It was something that was very important to us, to build something for the future as well. So basically we pioneered a direction in one of the 6 national theaters in Romania, because we do not have research laboratories, we do not have research centers. We are only starting to have a bit of academia in this regard, like a master's degree in game design. But they are students now, and this is what we're trying to do as well. I mean, set an example, show to the producer that it can be done in a resilient way, in an environment conscious way, and in a socially responsible way. This was something, I mean, the ethics of the project was something very core to us here. And I think it's very important generally when we are talking about this. And just another very short comment, because we were talking about artificial intelligence. For me, it would be the idea of a poetic relationship with technology. A poetic relationship also brings tension and metaphor. I mean, who is the creator, who is the player, and which is the game? It's another thing that Lucian Pitilie said. Its reality means just play the game. Are we playing the game, or we are just the elements that the game is playing with, and who is the game? And I think taking ownership and using the idea of a critical thinking, I think this is the most important thing. In order to use technology and to make it use in our benefit and to create a better future, we need critical thinking. Never abort critical thinking. Education is core.
I think that's a very, very, very good word to close this session. Thank you to all of you. We will all free you, because I think you have a general in 50 minutes for the show of tonight, and I saw you that you are a little bit nervous. But I really want to warmly thank you, and I also welcome you at the show at 7 tonight to see Florence on stage, because she is the writer, director, and actor, so this is a great job for her. And thank you to all of you. We will have the lunch now, and small housekeeping notes also by Annabelle, but thank you, and I want a round of applause for everybody, please.
Thank you so much also from